Hello, and welcome to the Route 50 Pulse Check, a new interview series focused on highlighting how mayors, governors, and county executives are stepping up to address some of the most pressing issues of the day. My name is Alicia Powell-Gillis, and I am the senior editor at Route 50. Joining me for this edition of Pulse Check is Austin Mayor Steve Adler. Mayor Adler, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you just give us a sense of where Austin is today as it pertains to COVID-19 and how the city's response has been going?
Well, I'll tell you, with COVID-19, there are two huge crises that are devastating. The first one is the health crisis, and the second one is the economic crisis. And both of them hit us real hard. With the health crisis, we have too many people that are sick, too many people that have died. We're seeing huge disparities in terms of the communities that are impacted from a health perspective, with our communities of color just being battered. We live in a state, it's a red state, and a state that was not ready to quickly adopt masking policies. But cities hung together, mayors and county judges, and were able to get our state leadership to come along, get our governor to not only be seen wearing a mask, but also to eventually mandate it as well. And that's helped a lot. We have a community that is really engaged. And for that reason, we're driving down infectivity right now. And we went from a city that was in danger of having its ICUs and emergency rooms overwhelmed to one where we had our first day of single-digit new hospitalizations this past week. But we are concerned that our city, like so many others, might fall prey to the overconfidence that comes with driving something down and then not able to sustain it. But right now we're in a good place. From an economic standpoint, you see the same kind of thing, where certain communities are disproportionately hit. We're hit really hard in music and childcare, in restaurants and bars. Some of the first industries to be hit, some of the last that are predicting that they'll be able to come back. Some aren't able to hold on, and we're losing some important businesses, iconic businesses in our city. We're fearful that when our economy starts coming back, we're going to see one of those K-shaped recoveries where a significant part of our population able to work from home, able to work remotely, able to compete well. It will do well, but yet so many of our essential workers and workers in those industries I talked about a second ago are going to face a tougher time coming back. So we're in a relatively good place compared to many other cities, but the challenges are still great.
Yeah, there are many things I want to pick up from what you just said. So first, let's kind of, as you talked about, you're in a good place right now. And obviously it cannot be overstated how much loss from a health and economic standpoint you have on, many of your colleagues have faced. But in that vein, when you talk about being okay right now and wanting to maintain that, how are you working to maintain that progress and avoid setbacks, particularly from a healthcare standpoint, so that your hospitals don't become overrun and you don't find yourselves in this situation again?
Well, what we've discovered as we've gone through this virus are really two things. The first one is the benefit of masking. The fact that that's a debate at all is criminal. We as a community, among others, are really the demonstrations that if people mask, if they social distance, that you can stop this virus, you can arrest its progress. So we have a community that has to continue doing that. We're being tested a little bit here with the University of Texas coming back into session. Students joining us now from all over the country. They have not been through the roller coaster with us over the summer. They were not with us as we watched numbers and then increase and saw all our physicians with fear in their eyes pleading with the community to help. They weren't here with us for that. So the culture, the societal norm where we're all wearing masks are something that they're going to have to learn. And I'm concerned with the size of student gatherings that I see. But it's not just the students, it's university decisions. My university here in Texas is opening football season on Saturday and going to put 25,000 people into a stadium. I'm concerned about that, having that many people gather in that way. There are not enough police or not enough law enforcement, code enforcement personnel to enforce our way to compliance with people wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. It's really got to be something that the community wants and really does self-police, where it establishes a norm. If someone walks into a room and half the people aren't wearing face coverings, then you're not as likely to put one on. If you walk into a room and everybody else has one on, you're probably going to put one on too. And we just have to, as a community, hang tough and keep it as a priority, stay disciplined in this work.
So since you brought up the football game at the University of Texas at Austin this weekend, which is probably important to note, that is allowable because of the Governor Greg Abbott's exemption of sports events to the ban of gatherings of over 10 people, is just the whole notion of mass gatherings and what the future of those look like. I immediately think, obviously, what Austin comes to mind is South by Southwest. And I think for me personally, when the announcement came that this year's festival could not go on, it really spoke to the seriousness of the crisis we were about to enter. But as we start to, move closer to seeing more of these mass gatherings, not just in your own city, but as the recent Kansas City Chiefs game, and we'll see that more and more as we go through the fall. What are you thinking about in the terms of prospect for these mass gatherings in 2021? Are there even ways for them to actually adapt and go on safely during a pandemic, or is it a fool's errand?
Well, ultimately, we're all hoping for a vaccine that would enable people to be able to be in closer contact and proximity to one another. My sense is that the size of gatherings will increase as the infectivity in the community goes down. At one point, the virus was such in our community that if you were in a group of any size, there was a really good chance that there would be other people in that group that were infectious, whether they knew it or not. As you drive down the infection level, it's less of a risk that you're going to be in a group with someone who has the virus. And as you drive that risk down, you can have larger groups because the risk level is effectively the same. And I see that happening over time, so long as the community stays disciplined. There's going to be still a limit, I think, on how close people get. I'm not sure, we get back to the same kind of life that we had before. But having events like South by Southwest, where people can casually run into one another without the formality of a Zoom call or the scheduled opportunities, important. It's important to who we are as social beings. So not a fool's errand. I think we're all trying to get back to that same place, and we have control over it to a degree by driving down the infectivity. And then when we're together, until there's a vaccine, wearing a mask and staying 6 feet apart. Those are all things that we can do. They're sometimes uncomfortable and it's hot wearing a mask in Texas, but a small price to pay for us to be able to be around one another.
So along those lines, being around one another, I'd like to shift to this conversation about that you brought up earlier about the economic fallout from the pandemic, specifically as it relates to Austin. And obviously, your live music scene is world renowned, but it's been hit very hard by the pandemic. So curious to hear how you're working with the industry that's seen some dire financial distress, and as you alluded to, is one of the last ones that can come back in a similar fashion to what we had seen prior to the pandemic. And as you've been having these conversations and discussions with those in the music industry, what advice do you have for your colleagues about who are facing similar challenges with their key local industries?
Well, I tell you, this virus is constantly presenting us with forced choices, with where the only options are ones we don't like. Limited number of resources to help people and businesses that are facing such extreme hardship, and not enough resources to go around. So you're having to make choices. The initial part of this virus, the choices that we made as a city council here was to get relief to individuals, to do our best to ensure that people didn't lose their homes and they had the ability to feed their families. In this period of time, obviously that need has continued. We've been able to help a lot of people, but the institutions and the systems are also stepping up to help ensure that people are fed and that people aren't losing their home. We've been able to address some of those issues with things other than resources by putting in my order prohibition on evictions from being able to move forward, and extending that not only to residential but to commercial evictions as well. And that's where our priorities were. We are now considering, and the council will consider here next week, a resolution that I brought that is searching for change in the sofa cushions, as well as trying to be really creative about the last significant piles of dollars that we might be able to put our hands on, and trying to figure out how to take that resource and leverage it to more and more people. And this time focusing perhaps not on the immediacy of a roof and food, but investing in the infrastructure that's going to be necessary for us to pull out of and come out of this pandemic. Taking a look at the multiplier effect that comes from ensuring that an industry like the music venue industry does not disappear and fail. If that happens, we lose a lot of our brand. We'll lose opportunities for a lot of people that work in those industries and live in those industries. So we're looking at things like creating an economic development corporation, kind of those quasi-governmental entities that are usually used for development purposes in cities, to provide kind of an interface between private market and government, a nimble governmental-like agency that works for the public good, and standing that up, but redirecting it so that it's not dealing with our large redevelopment projects, but having them focus perhaps initially on how do we help save iconic venues in the city, which to a degree are also real estate plays. How do we identify those industry participants that are crucial to our culture, our brand, that are crucial to so many people that work in those industries that are otherwise going to be lost? What support can we bring to help them survive? So it's a survival act resolution that we'll be considering next week. At this point, I think Austin, like cities across the country, are trying to be creative and innovative. All the while, we are pointing the finger at Washington and telling them to get their act together and actually get some relief out to the cities.
So really quick on that Washington point, from your vantage point, if federal funding doesn't come, what will that do? What message do you want them to understand about the consequences of this inaction?
Cities need support. We are thankful for the support that we've gotten so far, that we were able to immediately channel and funnel to individuals. It has saved lives. But if we can't sustain it, we're going to lose people and businesses, infrastructure in our community. The cities themselves are like businesses. I mean, the money that we've gotten from the federal government is not designed to help cities with the revenue losses that they face as a business-like enterprise, as sales tax revenues go down and development revenues go down. So cities are strapped, and cities are where a lot of the safety net infrastructure is put in place. Without federal assistance, the losses will be even more staggering. The recovery will take even longer to affect. Washington needs to help in order to be able to sustain the economies in our country.
So let's shift gears to another major topic of today, which is of police reform. You very recently in Austin did announce cuts to the police budget, and you got criticism from it from both sides. So what do you kind of say to the critics on both sides about why the cuts that were enacted were the right cuts to make to not only uphold public safety, but also start your city on a process to reimagine what public safety will be?
Getting criticized from all sides is not an unusual or atypical thing. It kind of seems to go with the job, and probably happens no matter what I do on any issue. But we have an opportunity in this moment to really take measure of who we are and what we do, to compare that to who we aspire to be as a community, and to take this moment of this opportunity, this change opportunity to really be more than what we've been. And one of the areas that really stands out is with respect to public safety. You see that with our biggest public safety threat right now, which is the virus, which has such disproportionate impacts in our city. We talked about that. But you also see real disparate treatment in all other aspects of society: access to capital, education, housing, healthcare delivery. We made decisions as a society generations ago that were intentionally and specifically designed and aimed to create those disparities. And I think that we have not only a moral obligation now to correct that, to fix that, to atone for that, but we have in our own self-interest, as we can see now more clearly than ever, that if we all don't move forward together, then there's real limitations on what we as a community can do. We really are in this together, and you see that with the virus. So we have a community that's been sitting at home watching that, looking at the disparate stuff, and then layered on top of that, we have the murder of George Floyd, and we have the killing of Mike Ramos here in Austin, in ways that you just can't explain. No one should die from what precipitated those actions. And it forces us to take a look at those events and understand that those are not isolated events. There is a long chain, a very continual chain that again points out that the justice and policing system that we have is not designed to make everyone feel safe, and everyone does not feel safe, and that the measure of safety depends again on which communities you are from. I look at other times in the United States history where there's been great disruption, where dreams and plans have been put to the side because of circumstances like the Great Depression, and using those opportunities to give birth to new systems and new ways, like the New Deal. So in Austin, that's how we're approaching public safety. Policing, an important part of public safety, but only a component of public safety. And what we did in this city was to start taking a look at things we could do that would better prevent crime from happening before police have to respond to it. Our police are spending a disproportionate amount of their time as our social workers and our mental health first responders. That's not a role we should have them in. There are better people to do that role. Our police should be investigating and fighting crime. But in order for us to do that, we actually have to help the people that are on our streets and living in tents get the support and health and help and homes that they need. If we were able to accomplish that, we would be a fairer, more just city. And our police could be doing other functions. Police should not be the way that any society interacts with poverty. in their city. They should address that. We should be increasing opportunities for women in abusive households to be able to call and not be put on a waiting list if they're trying to get out, but actually get them out before the police have to respond to another call at the home, because we had left people in less than safe places. We should be augmenting the mental health first responders so that they can respond to calls, bringing in the police if they need it. That's the kind of change that we did. We didn't do it because we weren't concerned about public safety. We are concerned about public safety. Austin is the safest big city in Texas, one of the safest big cities in the country. And we're safe because we are constantly trying to find better ways for everyone in our city to be and to feel safer. And that conversation now is going on in Austin. It's going to be going on in lots of other places. It's getting lost right now in debates about, do you defund or not defund police? And that word means 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people. And it's become like the political closing argument in the presidential election, which is also really unfortunate and harmful. We're going to stay focused on trying to keep everybody in our community safe and increase the opportunities for that, to change the systems and the structures that are built into our present systems, and come out. We're going to stay focused on the work, try to avoid the politics.
Right. Well, I'm actually going to quickly bring up the politics in the sense of, as you said, debates. Obviously, Governor Abbott has not been as big, has been kind of critical of this notion of police budget cuts, and has thrown out about potential takeovers of police forces. And as you talked about earlier about how you all want to be in this together, but there have been these moments, these tense moments between states and locals, not only in this issue, but as you alluded to earlier on COVID-19. So when you hear comments like that, and when you see this kind of, for lack of a better word, state preemption efforts, what effect does that have on your intergovernmental relations, as well as what effect does that then have on the communities that you serve?
I believe that government that is closest to the people has the best opportunity to really represent what it is that those communities want. That begins with the neighborhood group in the neighborhood, being able to talk about what that neighborhood wants and needs. And as you move further and further away, you begin to lose that. I've always applauded the states that look to the federal government and want local control, and absent a denial or a violation of protected constitutional rights. I think that's the right thing to do. It's surprising to me that our leadership in our state believes in local control when they're talking to the federal government, and they don't believe in it when they're talking to the cities. Cities in our state are the economic engines. They're the incubators of innovation. And our state is blessed with having multiple cities that are all different and have different advantages and help the state in different ways. We're a diversified portfolio of cities in this state, which is a really good thing. When Apple announces $1 billion plant, or Tesla announces a $1 to $5 billion plant, both of which have happened here recently. The Army Futures Command brings the first new Army vertical. All these are looking at cities across the country. They end up in Austin. They end up in Austin in part because we are different. It is our values. It is that we are progressive, innovative, entrepreneurial communities, and our ability to be able to maintain that, even if that makes us different than Houston and Dallas and San Antonio. Well, they're all different too in different ways. So there's a real cost to our state by trying to make all the cities look alike. And the people in this community, if they thought that what we were doing was wrong as a city council, they have direct relief. They can throw us all out of office and bring in a new mayor and a new set of city council people. And that's how the political process is supposed to work. That's how cities are supposed to, and states and countries are supposed to govern themselves. But we're caught in a different place where it's not about what's right and wrong or just and fair. It's becoming way too much partisan and about winning elections. And in that environment, it's been discovered that you can get some advantage if you want it by trying to make people scared of one another. We saw that in this state and in this country with the early conversations about immigration and trying to demonize immigrants and refugees, suggesting that they were somehow criminals or greater violators of law without recognizing that actually crime rate among immigrants lower than the general population. Crime rate among undocumented immigrants lower than the general population. I think it's ironic to point out that if we actually wanted to lower the crime rate in the country, we should bring in even more immigrants and undocumented immigrants so that we could average down the crime rate in our cities and our country. But those kinds of facts and data don't often find their place in political debates where people are trying to drum up votes by dividing us and making us scared of one another. And that's what's happening right now with the policing discussion. It doesn't surprise me that what the president is doing at the national level is now reaching down to my state as we begin to get closer to November. And I expect the intensity to build as we get closer and closer to the election. And that's what I see from my governor's press conference yesterday and his announcements earlier in the week. The fundamental truth is Austin is the safest big city in the state. And I would have expected our governor to recognize and applaud that.
So we've talked a lot of different topics today, and most of them not positive because it's been a tough year, as everyone has said. So I'm just curious for my final question is just what are you optimistic for the future?
I am real optimistic because this is a moment to get real transformational change, generational change in ways that we've never seen before. I'm an old civil rights lawyer, and the conversation that we're having right now on racial justice, I didn't expect to see in my term in this office. Unlike anything that I've seen, including the conversations that took place in the 1960s, because this one feels like it's actually going to result in real transformative work. And I'm incredibly excited to be part of that as it begins. I'm excited that in my city, we'll be taking to the voters in November a $7 billion proposal to put in mass public transit in a city of our size that hasn't had it, which serves to deny mobility justice and access to large parts of our community. It's hard to be part of a community if it takes you 2 hours to commute to and from a job on a bus. But that's something we've been trying to do for years, and we're going to take it to the voters in November. And people ask the question, is that really when you should be taking something like this that actually raises taxes to the voters in the middle of a pandemic? And for me, that answer is now more than ever. This is our opportunity. We have a whiteboard. We can come out of this pandemic as the more just, more fair, more equitable, more accessible, more sustainable city than we were before. I'm excited to have that whiteboard. I'm excited to have so much disruption that people are reevaluating things they had always taken for granted. This is a horrific, horrible health crisis and economic crisis that presents us such a wonderful opportunity. I'm excited.
Well, Mayor Adler, I'm excited to watch you all and see what a transformational change you embrace in Austin. So let me thank you for joining me today, and thank you for giving us your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation.
And now a word from our underwriters. Hi, I'm Ann Duncan. I'm a Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at Dell Technologies, and I'm part of a team of Chief Strategy and Innovation Officers. And our role is to help state and local government CIOs be more effective. We help them by delivering the Dell value proposition from the edge to the core to the cloud. Today, Rob Silverberg, who's responsible for our Digital Cities Initiative, is going to tell us a little more about that.
Thank you, Ann. And hi, everyone. Rob Silverberg. I lead the Dell Technologies focus for digital cities for North America. I've been focused on our smart city strategy for the last 5 years. And what I've seen is that there's been a great evolution over the last few years in terms of what was experiments with technology several years ago are now producing real actionable results for our city customers. The sort of results that we're seeing are improvements in transportation, improvements in public safety, the ability to become a more data-driven city, and leveraging new data sources from connected devices, as well as data sources from across the city organization for actionable intelligence. So the real outcomes that we're working on and hoping to work on with our city customers going forward are producing real manageable results from our smart city initiatives.